You're listening to the second part of a conversation with Amanda Hatherly, the CEO of BPI. As always, if you want to be updated when new episodes drop, be sure to follow our Spotify or YouTube. Thank you for listening.
The thing that I find fascinating is like how little contractors who are working in the space know about energy efficiency if they're just doing remodels or if they're just doing new construction. It's such and all the home performance contractors out there are doing amazing work, but there's so few of them compared to the people that go in and put in new countertops and all the new contractors. And it's such a needed field to develop.
Yeah, that's one of the things we really noticed a lot more recently. And it started, I was just thinking, a little bit ago, I was like, I have to explain what I do to everyone. No one has heard of like a home performance assessor, any of that kind of stuff. No one knows what that is. And I've said this refrain a lot. It's been in, I don't know how many of our videos or any of that stuff kind of you've seen or listened to, but I'll say a lot like, if you have problems with pipes, people know to call a plumber. And if you have problems with electrical wiring, you know to call an electrician. But what if your energy bills are too high? Or what if, for whatever reason, in one part of the home, you cough a lot more? It's just like these things that someone in the building analyst field can find answers to, or at least know, like, possible causes for that. That's part of the reason our podcast is called the Home Performance Advocates, because we want to advocate not only for the homes themselves, but also for the field of home performance in general. So that's one of the things we've noticed. Yeah, go.
Yeah, trying to figure out how homeowners know to ask. And quite honestly, a lot of homeowners are just struggling to get by and aren't even thinking about being able to up systems. So, that's where a lot of the utility funding or the federal funding comes in. Very handy, because you're just struggling to pay your grocery bills and your doctor's bills, and you've got mice in your house, but you just, I'm going to put down pesticides because it's quick and easy. And there's a lot that people don't have the money to go out and investigate further and it really impacts their health too, as well as their energy bills.
Something that I wish that would happen more often is when people are replacing systems and things like that, right? They're doing it even if they don't have, even if they're struggling financially or whatever, because they need that furnace to heat the house or whatever it happens to be. But I do really wish that like the HVAC community would have that knowledge of building science, right, of the building as a whole and things like that, as well as, or at a minimum, pointing towards the energy advisors and assessors as something to help these homeowners. Because if they're already having to make that big investment anyway, and we can make it so it's a little bit more efficient, that can change someone's life, right? Like all of a sudden they're not paying $300 a month, they're paying $200 a month, and now they can buy the groceries that they want or need, or they can not worry about every single penny because they've now saved something because they had the right information first.
And on that, like, you can kind of piggyback it too, in the sense that we can save them a lot of money if they are going to make that big system upgrade. If they come to someone like an energy assessor first, we can more than likely connect them with some sort of utility program or incentive program or income qualified program that could potentially get the whole project paid for, or a large lump sum of that project paid for. And if they hadn't have reached out to someone like an Eris or even a Blue Sky, who does have knowledge just by proxy of giving these trainings of rebate programs, they would go out and make these replacements and spend maybe $10, $15, $20,000, when if they would have came to us first, maybe now it's more like $5,000, and now it becomes much more feasible for them to do.
That's such a good point. And also the point, like, if I were having an HVAC company, I would want everyone to be trained in, like, being a building analyst technician as well, because if you're going in to do any work around HVAC and you can add that extra value by understanding how the house as a system works and point things out to people, you're way more likely to then have repeat customers and happy customers that refer you to other people rather than just coming, changing out a system and leaving. So to me, it makes really good sense. And I know that around the country, there are very successful HVAC companies that have incorporated the whole house as a system approach. But I also know it's really, it's really not really that common in the HVAC world.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the bigger gaps we've seen is making the case to the contractor that this actually benefits their business model when they incorporate that building science knowledge and look at the home as a system. It's actually going to help, like you said, Amanda, help them sell work, help them get the repeat customers, because when they go into the house, they realize, oh, the work I'm doing is also impacting every other facet of their house, and it helps sell more work.
Well, and with the I was just gonna say with the whole house approach, right? You actually solve the homeowners or the customer's problem instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of just a new, we put a mini split up above the room over the garage because that was too hot. Well, now you increase their bills. You might have made them a little bit more comfortable, but you just increase their bills instead of actually taking care of the issue, which was that giant knee wall, or the contractor forgot to insulate above it or below it, or whatever it happens to be. You can actually fix that problem.
Yeah, and I used to find, especially at the community college when I was working there, that contractors would come in, being sent and told that, yeah, you have to do this. And it's almost like as you're going through and learning that information, a light bulb goes off and it makes sense what you're doing. And people then really buy into wanting to be part of it rather than it just being something that is out there that they've heard about. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah,
we see that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Once people know about it, it's like, oh yeah, obviously I should provide that service, or I should want that service.
Yeah.
How do you see that gap between, and we'll start with the contracting end. So people already in a home related industry, how do you see that gap being bridged of them first hearing about BPI and building performance in general? How do you see that happening? And what are some pushbacks on that? We've talked about that a little bit, but if you have more.
I think that the building science principles, which is just a very basic entry level that can be taken by realtors, homeowners, people in the trade schools or community colleges as an entry level course, even at high schools as a one of the final years. It's such a easy entry point that gets you into it, and then you carry that information with you. And you, at that stage, you kind of know the value because you've learned it. And to me, it's a very, very easy entry point. It's not like a really complicated exam. It's available in Spanish and English. The reference guides in Spanish and English. We'd love to have it in lots of other languages, but that's what we have so far. But to me, it's such an easy entry point for people that to kind of get them hooked. And once you kind of get someone hooked on that part of knowledge, a lot of other things start falling in place, whether you're a plumber, an electrician, a contractor, a realtor, or wherever you are, and you start to make that whole connection, house as a system connection. I feel like that's how you get people engaged, and whether that can come through, like at BPI, we actively are trying to engage community college instructors or trade school, or to like, here's this you can take this book, you can create a curriculum out of it, you can at the end have this industry entry-level credential, as colleges and people love getting what they call like those stackable credentials, or helps people get into an industry. So I feel like that's a great place to start.
Yeah, for sure. I've always wanted to do high school. My background is high school teaching. I taught high school for a while. So I've always wanted to do like a high school curriculum for building science. And
there's a group up in Connecticut that has a grant where they are doing building science principles in high schools, and then they have some of the high school students end up kind of like becoming what would you call them, like sort of mentored to become trainers of building science principles themselves. And I think that's if there was some kind of grant available that could push that out would be fantastic. And they're one of our test centers at UR, so maybe you could use that model.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I think if you can get high school kids excited about this type of trade, because you have a really giant population of high school students who university might not be for them, whether it's financially or they just don't have an interest in it. And so a lot of the times they feel like there's not much of an alternative unless they want to get into like construction or some really physically demanding trade that they're not too excited about either. So if you can incorporate building science into the high school curriculum, get the students excited about it, that can be a really viable career path for them without having to get that 4-year degree. You know, we have plenty of field assessors who didn't get a 4-year degree and they're extremely successful in what they do. So I think it's a really, really smart idea to pinpoint high schools as an area to target for getting the population excited about this field.
Well, and what about when they're buying houses and stuff, right?
Yep.
So as people start, you know, they get married or whatever, right? They have a job or they can buy a house now and stuff. Now they're looking at the house differently. And that also helps new homes, right? Now new homes need to be built better because that's what people are asking for. And the fix and flippers, right? They have to do real stuff that more than just paint a house now, because these people have that base knowledge and they understand what the house needs for them to be comfortable and healthy and safe and all those things. So I think if we can do that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I also think that especially with high school students, they get so interested in like infrared cameras and blower doors, really interesting tools that you diagnose with. And so it's not just like you're walking around measuring things. It's it's really fun. You have to think things through these problems. So I feel like it's a great way to engage them, because it isn't just like, you know, a teacher teaching you something. There's a hands-on component, but it's not like you were saying chants where it's really physical and they're, you know, having to be lifting, you know, pounds and pounds of concrete around and that type of thing.
And what's more impactful than making the place you live in, or maybe the place your family or a relative or a partner lives in, more comfortable, safer, affordable? You know, it's an extremely, extremely impactful field too. So I think that could be a big selling point when shopping this around to high schools around the country. It's some of the most impactful work you can do, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Cameron, because you had said you were a high school teacher. When I was at the college, we had a lot of dual credit classes. So we had high school students and they would take building science principles and they would take healthy housing principles. And we paced it out over the semester so that in between each class once a week, they would then have to go back to their house and they'd have to like find all the moisture problems, or what's your furnace like? And they'll be like, I don't even know what is a furnace? Where is it? It was so, and then they'd have to take photos and then they'd have to like show what it was. And it was really nice because of the way a high school, you know, semester is. You could really engage them with their own home, going through slowly, kind of diagnosing it. It was really fun.
Yeah. Good hands-on projects, and integrated with like, schools are really into integrating subjects. You know, how can math talk to science, and how can science talk to history, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so, having them all work together, and building science covers a good chunk of stuff. And even high schoolers themselves, the top 2 things I always heard is, when are we going to learn something useful in school, like how to do taxes or how to buy a home? So that second one right there is like, well, this will help you at least understand homes better, you know, for that. I don't know if it'll help with taxes necessarily, but I heard that over and over again when they were bored in class. So but that's awesome. And then on the existing homeowner end, what do you think are some ways for either contractors that are home performance assessors or have that knowledge, how can they start bridging the gap to get homeowners excited about it, you know, beyond the high school phase? How can utilities help with that, and local governments help with bridging that gap?
The outreach to the homeowners, you mean? To engage the homeowners?
Yeah. What strategies might be best for engaging homeowners in home performance?
So I think from what I, seen around is that homeowners are, they want to get their nice new countertop if they got the money for it. They're not so interested in the add it maybe. But if you frame it in terms of their health and safety, that's in the comfort, that's where they buy in. So I think a lot of utility programs that are focused on like your energy bills, people may or they may or may not be paying their energy bills, and sometimes I know especially with some of the low income people, you can go in and do a lot of energy upgrades, and really that then allows them to live in a comfortable home with the thermostat set a little higher and have the same energy bill. So it may not necessarily impact them on the energy bills themselves, but it will really impact their comfort and their health and safety. So I feel like sort of leading with that is often valuable, because that's where people are day to day super interested.
I think that's a good point. What we see a lot of times when utilities focus on the bill reduction is we see a lot of unhappy customers, right? Because a lot of the bills are based on what they're doing in their house. And so you can make it as efficient as possible, but if they're keeping it at 85 degrees in there in the winter, because that's where they feel comfortable, then their bills are going up maybe, or staying the same, like you said, Amanda. And I think it just kind of gives the wrong idea to begin with, right? It's like, we're not necessarily, yes, if you get savings, that is amazing. That's a great thing. But maybe that's not what we're working for. We're working for a healthier home. We're working for a more efficient home for sure, but a more comfortable home, right? Those kind of things are a better life balance, right? Where saving on bills, that's great. But if that's the expectation, I think people are a little bit disappointed sometimes, right? Because they get the work done and then they're just like you said, they turn up the heat, right? So now they're at a comfortable temperature, but they're not saving money.
And tying that energy efficiency work to the air leakage and the moisture intrusion and the mold and the asthma, the microbial action that's going on in the house, and all of that, and then tying that to asthma and health issues, it's still energy efficiency because you're making the house tighter and better ventilated and that type of thing, but you're also then addressing something that's very meaningful to them if they have a kid who has asthma, for example. And there's a lot of data and statistics around how much of an impact it makes on the health of the people in the house.
If you were to quantify a value of your health and safety and your comfort inside your house every single day, that value from a dollar perspective is going to be much, much higher than the $100 or $50 you save them on your energy bill. So I think I agree with you, Amanda. The argument should always be to make it as interpersonal as possible, and how to correlate the work we're doing and trying to advertise and sell to homeowners, making it as personal as possible, and like selling it more from a perspective of you're going to be more comfortable in your home and safer in your home, as opposed to, oh, we're going to save you $50 on your utility bill. That's not going to have as big of an impact.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, awesome. I think now maybe just a few questions on some specific certifications, if that's good, and then we'll look towards wrapping with some generals about the industry, and then if you have any questions on your end too, we'll move to those as well. So for general or for specific certifications, I just had a few questions about a couple that BPI either has recently done or some older ones that I'm wondering about. One of them being, because it's fresh on my mind because I'm working on the HHE now, is there going to be a link between HHP, for principles to Healthy Housing Evaluator? Because I don't see, or maybe there already is, like I don't see anywhere on the website or anywhere in there where HHP is required or a possible prerequisite for that. Is that something in the works, or that's just a curious thing on my end?
Not a prerequisite, and in a way that depends on how a training organization wants to put the curriculum together. Like, for example, we had it so that we had HHP, and then we had this layer on top, which was HHE. So if you wanted to take HHE, it was almost like HHE and HHP were kind of like one thing. but it would be separated out to the HHP for those people, and then they're layered on extra content of HHE to make it, have that. And other organizations that don't offer HHP and just offer the Healthy Housing Evaluator, then they build out the entire thing around the Healthy Housing Evaluator. So I think that's kind of where it's at. In a way, it might have made more sense to do HHP as the first step and then have that as the prerequisite. But I think when HHE was developed, it was sort of its own big thing, and then HHP was developed off it. And part of that is because like the Healthy Housing Principles was sort of developed for anyone in the industry, from community health workers to realtors to construction, anybody. And then Healthy Housing Evaluator was sort of developed for the energy auditor sort of market. In a way, I feel like this should also be either a parallel type of a course with more advanced testing that's more focused on the health worker side of things. So that you wouldn't be doing the combustion testing and the blow-door testing because they don't have that equipment. And so there would be kind of two parallels, but that's the way it is. And unless we got a whole lot of funding, we don't, we can't really change it up right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just curious on that end, but yeah, that's awesome.
But I will tell you, with the Healthy Housing Principles, that's been out for ages, and we didn't ever have a structured like knowledge testing list because it has sort of been wrapped up in that Healthy Housing Evaluator course. So we just recently created the knowledge testing list with subject matter experts. It's basically aligns, if you've already developed delivering that training, it's not going to be very different. There may be like 5% more differences because we added in a bit more information about accessibility and maybe a little around resilience, but it doesn't dramatically change that that course. But it does now give us a structured kind of a handbook for instructors to use to develop curriculum and for students to look at, like, oh, this is the scope of that certificate, because we didn't have that before.
Okay. Yeah, good. Thank you. Another one I wanted to, I want more people to want the TBP, the total building performance. When I was designing that one, because that one's more recent. Was it last year? Last year. I designing that, I'm like, this is great. So, because I did a little bit of solar for a while, and it really incorporates. It's an electrification type of training. It's great for that. And with so many companies popping up that are helping people move towards electrification, like, that's an awesome training. I want more people to want that. What has been the response to the TBP, and how can we promote that more? Like, what should we do for that course?
I think that course is a little ahead of its time, almost. It's one that is, I think like you, is really needed, but doing because part of the scope of that course is also like a deep energy retrofit, which, as we discussed, can be very expensive for people. And unless you have very high energy bills, or you're completely committed to, wanting to go net zero energy on your home, it's a big lift for a contractor to go in and try and sell that to a homeowner, unless there's a program that is really incentivizing you to do so. So where those might exist, I think there'd be good uptick, and I think it's great knowledge for contractors to have, to be able to, I'm sure you all are, because when you've been in the training field, you just love learning new stuff and finding out more information. And so that would be something I would just be all over if I'm a contractor. But there's a lot of people who are, basically, they're very, very knowledgeable in their field, and there's no market that they see right now, so they aren't going to jump on that until there is a market for them. And so that's where I feel like it's great, but a lot of contractors are busy enough with what they're doing and don't see that as a big market.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where the utilities have to come in and put some more money towards the incentives.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, to help
what
bridge.
Are they called? The bundling?
Yes, bundling of the rebates, like the whole home efficiency rebate, that type of thing.
Yeah, and where we have obviously huge success with our certifications and standards is but because utilities call them out to participate in their programs, you have to hold those credentials. And then the reason why they call them out is that if you have a contractor that's working to standards and has been trained and has the credentials, then you know that you're not just like throwing incentives at people that aren't going to be able to, maximize and install them correctly, do the right evaluation, that type of thing. So this is, I think that's where the standards and credentials are so important.
Yeah, I agree. The electrification field, especially, is, I mean, when there is an electrification contractor, sometimes it can be kind of cash grabby, like, oh, let's just jump in, do this quick, let's get out of here. It's heavily sales based. So yeah, I think I agree on that. Standards, credentials, that kind of stuff, helping move it in a right direction for recommended practices. Parker Chance, do you have any specific credentials or certifications you have any questions about?
I don't think I do.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, on the course development end, I'm just like, man, I'm so excited that you came on and I was able to just ask you about some of those, because I've been thinking about them. Like, man, TBP, I want people to take that, or HHP, HHE, stuff like that. So that's awesome. Are there any questions that you have for us as a training center as we look to close?
Well, I could tell you one that I'm a future credential I'm super excited about, except that we don't have any funding for it. And I think that you would actually be really maybe interested in this, is I just feel like in the world right now, with all of the disasters that are happening, it would be wonderful if there was a credential that contractors could, be able to say, look, I'm certified in like resilience principles for housing. So it would take into account like fire and floods and high heat events and power outage events, and being able to go in and advise homeowners as to, like, there's a town, I can't remember which it is, but it's over sort of by Aspen, I think, where that whole town, they say in the next 10 years, every house in that town will be affected by the flood or fire. So being able to go into advise homeowners around, where the risks might be in their housing, I think would be a great credential, but we don't have any funding yet to develop it. But the question I do have for you all is, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, but over the years and as we work with you, any suggestions that you have for BPI to be a better partner to help with you as a test center? We love feedback and we love being able to like develop out and help.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the question. How can we help you all better?
Yeah. Well, and I think what you have been doing with Jasmine and things like that, right? Like that has been very helpful and appreciated. So I think something that we do struggle with periodically, or in general maybe, is just the recognition. People don't know what we do, right? And so as BPI has been basically telling more people about BPI and what the training centers do and stuff like that, that has been helpful. And I think the more of that can happen is good for the industry. It's good for the test centers. It's good for BPI as well, right? Just to get more people familiar with what we do and why you should be part of this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely Jasmine, for people listening, is fabulous marketing person. She's been really, championing this push to really like provide test centers with support and, more materials and opportunities. I know she's still working on that, trying to, provide more value so that you have either short videos or flyers or information that you can give to people as you're out in the world.
Yeah, I have saved on my, that's good. She's doing good, because I have saved on my whatever you call that, bookmarks bar, the BPI resources, where they just had some stock photos of people doing energy assessment work. So that stuff pretty helpful for training centers, because then that helps, it's hard to find stock photos that look, good and aren't kind of grainy. From I look through my own assessments and I have a ton, and with Eris, it's great to have a ton too. But also those are pretty nice. So that's awesome. The only thing I can think of is, and I know you mentioned this when you ran the training center, is sometimes it's hard to know where certain standards come from, like how that got developed. Like you said, there's a whole board of subject matter experts and everything. And now that I know the difficulty in connecting with training with ANSI and the requirements BPI has to follow, I understand more how it's difficult. But yeah, there's certain times I'm looking through a standard, or I take a test and I'm like, where would I even find an answer to that question? What standard set do I go to for that? Is the only struggle I'll have sometimes. I just don't know where to look.
And actually, when we are redoing we have a new website that's going to launch probably in the next month or two. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
On the standards page, I mean, at the beginning of each standard, it will tell you who the subject matters experts were who contributed to that standard. So that if you've got a question, I mean, you can always reach out and ask us. I mean, it's not like we won't answer you if you're saying like, what number should I be using for dense packed cellulose, for example? We just can't like evaluate your training, but we are open to, any technical questions. And then the different certifications have got listed like what standards apply for those certifications. So if you go look on the standards page, it will tell you like if you're, energy auditor, here's the standards that will apply to that. And hopefully that is makes sense. I know some of our standards are sort of under revision because they're a little outdated and they just need constant revision, and some of them are in the process right now.
Yeah, I'm sure, like you said, with funding for that constant revision, sometimes stuff changes, like heat pump stuff changes sometimes monthly. Like, different things will change quick. So
technology changes really quickly.
Yeah, that's a task to keep up with for sure. So I don't envy that job in trying to keep up with that. All right, let's wrap with just if that's good. You don't have any?
Yeah, no, that was it. Just and also anyone who's listening, definitely reach out if you've got questions. We are here to like help and support the industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, sweet. Yeah, let's wrap with just one. If you have to give a heavy hitter, quick, practical piece of advice for someone in the industry right now, either a training center or someone doing energy assessment, something along that line.
I would say just jump in and keep educating yourself. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. There's so much new, like you mentioned, new information. It's fun, and I would just keep learning.
Yeah. Awesome. Lifelong kindergarten. That's what we're about, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. Yeah. It's been great. Awesome
So
discussion.
nice to chat. Thank you,
Amanda.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything, and I'll put in stuff in the show notes if there's anything you want me to put in, like notes to where to go to and everything. But if there's anything like that.
My website, my email address is fine.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Well, great having you on, and for everyone listening, thank you for listening to this awesome episode where we have such a awesome guest. If you want to ever know more or listen more, obviously go through to BPI's website. You can also go to our website, blueskytraining.com, and see our trainings listed there for more information on home performance. If you want to follow this show so you stay updated whenever we release new episodes, go ahead, follow us on Spotify or YouTube. Thank you for watching.